Okay.
Morning.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with the roll call. Quick, McKee here, Schultz.
Here.
Bottoма.
Yep.
Behrenkamp.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
We'll go into the Pledge of Allegiance if you'd like to stand and join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Looks like we do have a couple things.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do have a few items on the dais. We had a corrected land use application form that was missing from the packet and a map for item 7B related to the EAW. We got cropland bids open today, so we have a copy of the cropland bid results. Then we had a few items related to 8A and 8B, emails that we received. And then we do have two additional items that we received, or that staff is asking to be added to the agenda. 9A is police department staffing. We're asking for authorization to move forward with a detective process, and then a Hennepin County Youth Sports Grant application, and looking forward to have that as 10B on the agenda.
Sounds good. Anything from council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add a point for new business to talk about urban reserve and development rights trapped in that.
Okay. Sounds good, and feel free to remind me if I miss my note here. But sounds good. Anything else? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Second. Thought I heard you say.
I was close. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commission representatives, we have Dean Jacobs and Judy Strahler, either here or online. Perfect. And then we'll go into open forum.
Perfect. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9 or click raise your hand to be recognized for open forum. Open forum is for items generally not on the agenda. We do have a few public comment periods throughout the rest of the agenda. We do have some comment cards, but none of which are for open forum.
Okay.
So anyone wanting to speak at open forum can come to the dais. Otherwise, anyone wanting to speak virtually, again, raise your hand. We'll recognize you. But at this time, Mayor, no one's raising their hand.
Okay. Then we'll go right on. No presentations, so move on to consent agenda, which consists of items 7A through 7F. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Mr. Mayor, just kind of normal procedure, what we've done, if we could just pull 7C quick.
Yep, sounds good. Anything else? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A, B, D, E, and F.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And 7C, let me get that pulled up here. It's donation from the stanchion. If anyone has it handy. I'm not finding mine.
Here it is.
Thank you. So I'll just read the resolution. Whereas the City Council of the City of Corcoran, Minnesota is authorized to accept donations of real or personal property pursuant to Minnesota Statute 456.03 for the benefit of citizens, and is specifically authorized to accept gifts, and whereas the city received a monetary donation in the amount of $150 from the stanchion, is allocated to the police department, and whereas the City Council finds that it is appropriate to accept the donation as offered for the benefit of the City of Corcoran and its residents. Now therefore be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Corcoran acknowledges the generosity of the stanchion and graciously accepts the donation. Easy for me to say. Thank you, stanchion. We appreciate it.
And if I may, we get a lot of those things here. We've got a great community. To see all of you guys here, we've got a pretty good idea why. I want to make sure you guys know and understand, as you guys are citizens, we are too. A lot of the decisions that this group makes aren't the easiest in the world, but we're up here to do that. But we truly appreciate the stanchion and all of the other donations that we've received in the past and will get, no matter how large, how small, they mean a lot to our community. So thank you, stanchion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve consent agenda item C?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the planning business. We have a public comment opportunity for, I think we'll probably split this up. So we'll start off with a public comment opportunity for item 8A, which is the Right Hennepin Electric Administrative Permit Site Plan and Preliminary Plat. And then we'll kind of do public comment before each item for planning business.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor. We do have 3 members of the public that will call up to the podium. Anyone joining us virtually, if you want to press *9 or click reactions and raise your hand, we'll recognize you once we finish the public comment in the chambers here. First, I have Susie Sween. Come up and join us and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Susie Sween. I'm the trustee for the George Daigle property located on 7400 116. My address is 2112 Holy Name Drive, Wayzata, Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. To the Corcoran City Council members and staff, I thank you for your responses and thoughts prior to this meeting and on this issue. I especially would like to thank Mr. Mark Lanterman of the Planning Commission, who went to bat for us when no one else on the panel would. His brave, tenacious spirit is very, very much appreciated. As you all are working within your code, I would respectfully ask for you to consider using the highest bar when addressing the safety, EMFs, stray voltage, ground currents, oil storage, and of course, the appearance of the Right Hennepin substation. I'm under the uncomfortable impression that some city staff are working toward a different goal. I've seen a dismissive, condescending push in this process. From the beginning, what Right Hennepin was doing seemed rushed, and in our personal case, they used some intimidation and harassment. In case you hadn't heard, I already signed a purchase agreement for our entire piece of property before this eminent domain taking began. Harassment from their legal team ranged from numerous unwanted coercive calls to a letter slandering my brother and claiming Right Hennepin representatives and their appraisers felt they may be in physical danger when they showed up to view our property. My brother and I were there. A spirited debate was had. I was armed with a paper and a pencil. Wouldn't you think such fear would have made people flee or call the police? On the contrary, laughter and jokes were part of the conversation. One last disturbing thing. I was told by a confidential source, one of Right Hennepin's own board members said, "We're going to build it wherever we damn well want to, and the owners can go F themselves." Of course, another assault is the dissection and then taking of our property and leaving us to mop up the remaining mess. Under 1030.090, Essential Services, Subdivision 2B, the city shall consider the effect of the proposed project upon health, safety, and general welfare of the city as existing and anticipated, and the effect of the proposed project upon the comprehensive plan. I'll briefly go over concerns that I believe should be given thoughtful consideration regarding the proposed substation. Electromagnetic fields, excessive ground currents, environmental concerns, sound pollution, and visual impact. Number one, electromagnetic fields. EMF is a consequence of anything that uses electricity or carries electricity, including power lines. Electrical substations, along with the associated electrical equipment and the high electric currents cause significantly higher EMF fields in the proximity of the substation. I understand that the council, in addressing health and safety in regards to EMF, is difficult when studies are vague and sometimes contradictory. The study commonly used is dated 1999. It admits weak evidence regarding leukemia in children. In part, it reads, quote, "In 1999, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences studied the health effects of EMF exposure and found conflicting results. Though they concluded the evidence is weak, linking EMFs to health risk, they also found that the most common health risk was leukemia, mostly appearing in children. The electric companies know more studies are coming. They downplay the negative effects of the non-ionizing EMFs because that is one of their primary byproducts. As the health effects of 5G are gaining interest, microwaves can emit 2G. More current studies are showing microwave syndrome, or EHS, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, is real and has an accumulative effect on people. This sensitivity can be triggered by, wait for it, non-ionizing, lower than governmentally allowed EMF ranges. One PubMed.gov paper says numerous studies have shown biological effects at the cellular level from EMFs, at magnetic fields, ELFs, and radio frequencies. This biological effect is, quote, in extremely low intensities. One more study published in the journal Medicine's Access also confirmed that non-ionizing radiation well below levels allowed by authorities can cause health problems. The excessive ground currents, number 2, in proximity to the substation. Basic electrical engineering indicates that all electrical currents that leave the electric supply substation must return to the source substation. The return currents flow both through the neutral conductors in the power poles and through the earth, called earth currents. The earth currents can result in stray voltages in proximity to the substation. This can happen at all locations that are grounded to the earth, which include all homes and businesses. Grounding is required per the NEC, National Electrical Code. These stray voltages will occur on all conducting paths within the homes and businesses, including all wiring and plumbing. Number 3, environmental concerns. According to the Substation 2 specifications, the design provides for 2 115 kV substation transformers. The specifications do not indicate the kVA size of transformers. However, in typical substation transformers, the amount of oil would be in the range of 2,000 gallons per transformer, or in this case, 4,000 gallons of oil. There also may be other equipment within the substation that contains oil, which could amount to an additional hundreds of gallons of oil. With designated wetlands located about 250 feet from the proposed substation and the soil being sandy silt, the dangers of leaking or even possible high voltage explosion, the contamination would seem a distinct possibility. Although the design provides for berms or a catch pond, possible high voltage events are very difficult to predict, along with the possible contamination of oil, especially during an explosive event. A leak or explosion could cause the oil to access the wetlands, and the environmental impact would be significant. Number 4, sound pollution. Due to the low frequency of the electricity within substations, 60 hertz or 60 cycles per second, there's a constant audible hum emitting from substations, equipment, and conductors within the substation. Engineering studies show that noise from typical substations emits sounds in the range of 60 to 80 dBA. Typical complaints from nearby residents are from substation transformer sizes of 20 to 150 MVA at distances from the substation perimeter within 500 to 600 feet. There are also indications that the audible hum of substations is heard from as far away as 1,000 feet when the background noise is minimal, such as during nighttime hours. This constant audible hum will very likely be heard within the linear city park and by people living in proximity. This will definitely negatively affect the marketability of properties near the substation. A large noisy substation is inconsistent with the current zoning and future uses. Number 5, visual impact. Based on the Corcoran 2 substation specifications, there will be multiple high-voltage transmission towers within the substation that will be nearly 60 feet tall. Even though the substation specifications propose a few trees and other landscaping around the perimeter in an attempt to hide the substation, it will still be clearly visible from many miles away, including being easily visible from within the city of Corcoran and neighboring properties. This is clearly a negative impact to the community. If I could offer a suggestion instead of slats, have Right Hennepin mirror the beautiful red barn that's pictured on your logo, on the City of Corcoran logo. That at least would show the community a good faith effort on aesthetics. My question to the City Council is, knowing that studies are showing the harm of EMFs and knowing our mixed residential property and your linear park is being served up for an EMF and ground current future, how can you rubber stamp this? With the acknowledgement that EMFs and ground currents are going to be present, how is a substation in mixed residential consistent with the city's plans in that area? And have you been considering the welfare of the future residents? Just to name a few of allowed examples. Senior living. A lot of pacemakers and defibrillators in that population. EMF interference, anyone? Daycares, leukemia in children. Oh, but low incidence.
Hey, Susie, 1 second here.
Sure.
We technically have gotten past the 5-minute mark.
Permission to extend.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I was thinking that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Residential homes, families living and sleeping 24/7. Recreational facilities are allowed, maybe a pool, a whirlpool, and a few showers for ground currents to invade. Corcoran's proposed linear park could be affected too. Stray voltage can run through metal grates in sidewalks and sewer covers. Light poles and metal fences have even been found to be electrified. Will you be considering the effect of the proposed project upon the health, safety, and general welfare of the city as existing and anticipated? Or because it's administrative, there's no need? I believe allowing a substation on residential properties is reckless. Right Hennepin has installed in me a healthy dose of skepticism. What Right Hennepin's presentation and vague talking points come down to is their 57,000 memberships and not the primary good of the Corcoran community. When Right Hennepin and the city planner state that it is common to locate these services in residential districts they serve, and the community impact and risks are low. What does that really mean? What's commonly done doesn't equal safety or prudence. What criteria did they use, and how did Right Hennepin measure minimal community impact? Are they talking about the impact on real people in the community, or the impact on a paper community via subjective, controversial studies? Right Hennepin also tries a scare tactic. Unless Right Hennepin builds now, we cannot assure adequate reliability for Corcoran residents after 2022. They couldn't assure that before. I'm thinking Excel could probably pick it up. Right Hennepin clearly states multiple times that their priority is their membership. Under our vision, on their website it states, to benefit our members. Right Hennepin and its diversified businesses will outperform our competitors, blah, blah, blah. Under Right Hennepin's own 7 cooperative principles, guess which principle is listed last? Concern for community. In the packet submitted by Red Hennepin, they present 10 criteria to evaluate sites. Nowhere does it address the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighbors who will be affected now and in the future. In that same packet, under extensive evaluation of other sites, Red Hennepin said they evaluated more than 10 sites and contacted 10 property owners soliciting interest. I know 2 of the properties and owners that were bullied and threatened with condemnation, Shamrock Golf and ours. I wonder if the remaining 8 were also recipients of this treatment. My guess is that their protocol was not equally applied to all. Red Hennepin gives reasons that other sites are infeasible. No willing seller was listed as number 1. Are you kidding me? After seeing that, the remaining points to me are very discredited. Make no mistake, the city of Corcoran is being squeezed in the middle of this, but they seem to be free from accountability as code allows the substation in residential areas. The Red Hennepin Electric corporatocracy has unlimited resources to draw from, and their status as a provider of essential service is protected and even facilitated by governmental powers. Who will be accountable in the future? Our property and our neighbor's property is being served up as a sacrificial lamb for the 2,246 Red Hennepin members who reside in Corcoran. This is a minority. If Corcoran's population number is 5,379, and that census was 2010, that means over 3,000 residents of Corcoran are not members of the Red Hennepin Cooperative and most likely use Excel. Why doesn't Red Hennepin tell us about the health safety issues? Where does Red Hennepin address the known negative health effects? Why don't they tell us about the potential environmental safety risks? 4,000 gallons of oil, transformers, risks of leakage, and explosive events. As electric companies and cooperatives have the resources and money to influence regulatory agencies and also influence those who author independent research studies, their presentations are inherently biased. They're literally in charge of studying and implementing their own agenda. It's like a self-licking ice cream cone. Everyone here should be concerned about the governmental powers given to anointed corporations which provide essential services. Just imagine the next essential service that will be needed. Water tower, oh, they'll tell you it's a small footprint. How many of you would like to have one in your backyard? Telecommunications tower, with 5G and more coming, how are residents going to protect themselves from this popping up next door? Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, known as microwave syndrome, has been shown to be debilitating and very real, as I've already referenced. Another substation. At the last Planning Commission, Red Hennepin acknowledged if growth continues, another substation would most likely be in the future. I've been told that you, the Corcoran City Council, can't do anything about this substation issue, that this is an administrative process. In going forward, I respectfully ask the elected representatives and paid staff, please work to make this type of assault on our community and residential properties more difficult. Facilitate the finding of pertinent research and enact new codes to incentivize this type of essential service to locate in more appropriate industrial areas. Thank you very much for your extended time.
Thank you. Next, we have Anthony Drishkoff. We could get your name and address for the record.
My name is Anthony Raskob. This is in reference to the Red Hennepin substation on the corner of Larkin and 116. My address is 973 Fairfield Court, Minnetonka, 55305.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about a couple issues that I feel are important. The gas line. There's a gas line up on that property on 116 and Larkin where they want to put this substation. Gas line runs along Larkin, and then it runs down 116. Is that the safest place we can put a substation? Is that their choice? They said they checked 10 other sites. 10 other sites, and they chose our property next to a gas line. I drilled footings for Tri-State Drilling, for 37 years, and I put in footings for these power lines. And I also did a whole number of substations. Were any of them next to a gas line? Yeah, it's buried. Yeah, we know it's buried. Gas line's right across the street, right west of 116. Oh, that's safe. That's safe. Oh, is it? Is it really safe? I don't think it is. The paper read, this site, this is what a response to my sister Susan. I am the brother, by the way. She started off where we met out on our property, and 3 associates from Wright Hennepin showed up. And they're kind of bullies, in my estimation. But we'll get to that later. They figure that this site is best located. The best location. This is the best place that this substation should be. Really? They were in a hurry. My sister Susan said they were in a hurry. We got to get this done, and we're going to eminent domain it. They didn't check. Northern Natural Gas is the gas company that runs through our property. I don't think that's the best site. Really? Is that where you're going to put that thing? I don't think it's a good spot. Safety, that's what I'm talking about, safety. Is electric unpredictable? Yeah, I'd say it is. It's real unpredictable. We should worry about safety. That's important to everyone. They have chosen the highest spot in Corcoran. Again, really, 10 spots, and you choose the highest spot in Corcoran. Well, isn't that wonderful? You know what I was drilling? You can get the permits, put the substation in, and there's 2 60-foot power poles. Well, you can add another one later. I know because I did that over on Highway 55. There's a substation. Right between Rockford and Buffalo. Great River Energy. I drilled another footing there. I drilled another tower. Do you think it's going to stop at 2? I doubt it, because that happened over there. Jump over to Highway 55, between Highway 55 and 24 on Highway 101. You want to see how people can hide a substation? Go over, drive 55 to 101 and look for the substation. They got that sucker put way back there. They got it way back there. You don't even know it's hardly there. And there's a big water tower, substation back behind a bunch of trees. You got to go at least 2/10 of a mile. Hey, great idea. Same thing with the substation over Great River Energies between Rockford and Buffalo. Go over there and check that out. You drive west, big woods. You can't even hardly see the substation. You might be able to see the poles, but yeah, try that. Figure that one out. It's an XL substation on Highway 101, if anybody's interested in looking at how you do a substation. I know they gotta have electric, I get that. But safety is pretty important too here. And I don't know if they've done studies on, gas line right across the street. It's like a switch station. These 8 or 10-inch lines come up out of the ground, and it's crazy. I don't know if it's high pressure, I think it is, and then it runs along our property. That's not safe. I don't think it is. I think that should be looked at. One other thing. My sister Susan's done a hell of a job. She's been fighting like heck for us. You know what really bugs me? What bugs me is Wright Hennepin, in the paper it read how they want to put this substation in, it's for the people, we need it for the city, and then we're going to donate 1.78 acres for a park and sidewalks and whatever. That's the property they took from us. They're giving it away. That's to make themselves look good. Oh, isn't that great? Do you think a builder could have done that too? A home builder? We had that thing sold, and if a home builder would have came in, they would have gave you the same thing. But they're tooting their doggone horn saying how great thou art. That's a bunch of crap. As far as I'm concerned. Sorry if I'm getting revved up here. Finally, Sister talked about how we were bullied and slandered. Okay, you can tell I'm speaking with passion. I'm not drunk. By the time that meeting, we had a meeting up there, the three of Wright Hennepin's staff, Tim Virgin was the one guy, bigger than me. You know, they felt threatened. Right. He bragged about his football career. But by the time that made full circle around to our realtor and got back to me, they thought I had been drinking. I've been sober for 42 and a half years to this day. And that's the kind of stuff we put up with. That should stop. That's not fair. And I would hope in the future, for everybody's sake here, that this bullying and pushing around, and you all know who you are, stops. Because our doggone realtor got beat up pretty bad over this, and he was only doing his job. He was under contract and he couldn't do nothing, but he got bullied. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you listening to my story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking, Anthony.
Yep.
One more?
Yeah, one more. Greg Hoagland.
Hi, my name is Greg Hogan. I'm at 19220 Hackamore Road. I, by chance, happened to walk into the Planning Commission meeting where the Wright Hennepin issue was being discussed. I wasn't even really aware of what was going on. But it was very quick for me to realize that we've got a large company that is using eminent domain to take 40 acres of land from landowners. And from a principle standpoint, I don't think there's anything that revs me up even more. So you've all witnessed tonight, Susie, okay, this is happening right in front of us, where I applaud you for the courage. Nobody likes to come up here and in the middle and make a presentation while a company, which, by the way, it's the second time in 2 years that this has happened by a company in Corcoran to use eminent domain, okay? So this is not new. But we have a company, and by the way, I'm a 34-year member of Wright Hennepin, okay? So technically I'm a member. I don't know what that means, but the courage that Susie has, and I knew George, you're witnessing a shakedown, okay? And people use the process for speed that they've looked. Are you guys aware Corcoran's 36 square miles, okay? It's one of the largest pieces of land in Hennepin County left. And the idea that Kendra's presentation made no mention of eminent domain. The council member, Landerman, had to pull out the actual facts that, oh, this happened in January with judges and what have you. This has already happened, and we're making a fake presentation, okay? Acting like the applicant is doing this. And let's all laugh tonight when the applicant wants to give back 1.7 acres of the land they took. Like, where am I, right? So we're taking 5 acres of the Dejos land. We're giving back 1.7. Oh, that's cool for a park. And then we're devaluing the other 35. Okay? Now, Greg, as somebody would say. They're getting fair market value, right? What the city's getting is a permanent eyesore coming down 116 with 60-foot stories, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be wonderful. And here's my advice tonight. Why don't we, whenever Ray Hennepin's making your presentation, just skip the buffer conversation and the trees and the road and all the fake stuff that you've looked at all the sites, and there's an impressive need. I've lived here for 22 years. You could have been advancing this all along. Okay, so let's not even do the fake conversations from the city or the presentation. Just get it over with, because I think that's what we're going to end up hearing tonight, that nobody can do anything, and we'll all enjoy our eyesore, but I want you all to know how courageous it is that somebody fights for the land, and there's nothing I admire more than somebody fighting for their principles, and to take somebody's land from the Dagel family. It's disgusting.
That's great.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone wanting to speak online, you can press *9 or raise your hand. At this time, Mayor, no one is raising their hand.
Okay.
And I don't have any other comment cards.
Oh, got one more.
Go ahead.
Matt Fowl, 6315 Willow Drive. I was up here to address this 2 meetings ago. When they were going to steal the property from Shamrock Golf Course, which is another Dagel family, they were going to just take 2.5 acres. And now all of a sudden they want 5. And I'm not sure why this is doubling, just so they can give it back with their little pat on the back. But like I said a few weeks ago, if this is for all the new housing, I think it should be on the other side of the road, and Lennar should donate the 5 acres. But if it's for all the infrastructure that you guys are bringing in, then I think we stick it behind City Hall on city property and not take it away from private citizens. Or you've got an industrial park you're talking about on Larkin that absolutely doesn't fit. It's an elephant in the phone booth. Put it right there. It's an industrial deal. Put it on the industrial property.
Thank you.
Mayor, at this time, no one else is raising their hand.
Okay, then we will go into the presentation.
Kevin, you want to go ahead?
Yep. Is this already on?
Yes, it's
Okay.
on. Just tell me when to advance.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight you have before you the preliminary plat, site plan, and administrative permit for Wright Hennepin Electric. Slide. It is located on the northeast corner of County Road 116 and Larkin Road, shown image. The property is currently guided mixed residential and zoned mixed residential RMF2, and essential services are a permitted use in each district and all other zoning districts. Just to give a background from the previous application, in 2021, the applicant did submit a preliminary plat, site plan, administrative permit, and variance for a substation that was on the south side on 19835 Larkin Road. At that time, the planning commission voted 4-1 to recommend denial based on the finding that the variance standards weren't met for the smaller lot for that piece of property. And following that, the applicant did withdraw and has been evaluating alternative sites. With the current application, it was reviewed at Parks and Trails Commission on February 17th, and they did recommend acceptance of Outlot A, which is that linear park of 1.7 acres, to satisfy the park dedication requirements for platting this property. The Planning Commission did review this application with a public hearing on March 3rd and did vote 5-0 to recommend denial of the request. Just to go quickly over the preliminary plat, it would be a subdivision of the 36.9 acre parcel, with Wright Hennepin acquiring 5 acres of the land. Lot 1, Block 1, which is the location for the substation, is 2.8 acres. Outlot A is 1.5 acres, and then 2 acres is dedicated to right-of-way for County Road 116. Outlot B that remains would be 32.29 acres retained by the owner, and they would dedicate that Outlot A, as mentioned. The site plan for the property There are wetlands on site, and the wetlands in the proposed development of the substation would be filled with the outlot B remaining wetlands to be maintained with the buffers. Employee parking is on the north side of the substation, and then access to Larkin is limited to the 4-ton roadway limit, unless the applicant would improve Larkin from 116 to their entrance to a higher tonnage road. It'd be limited to 4-ton. So the landscaping, just a couple of quick changes from the planning commission. The applicant did submit revised plans, so a couple of the pieces that were incorporated. There's overall grading on the site. The substation's in the center with the stormwater pond on the north. The changes to the east and west sides where there's not as much space, they did move the grading that was being proposed off of the site onto the site, which did reduce the berm on the west-hand side of the substation, just to keep the grading all on site there. And they did submit a revised landscape plan as well, which incorporated additional plantings to more effectively screen at planting height. And this is to meet the ordinance requirement that all substations be screened from view, from the ground level view. I mean, it's going to be 60 feet tall, so it won't screen everything, but from screening from the ground level. So the recommendation is to move to adopt Resolution 2022-24 approving the preliminary plat, site plan, and administrative permit, subject to the conditions in the resolution.
Thank
If
you.
there's any questions for me or other staff, please let us know.
Any questions on that, or who wants to start us where?
I can start.
Sure.
Thank you for those of you who spoke. I appreciate the difficulty of speaking in public. Certainly, I think all of council probably agrees, probably from everybody else, as they have their turns. We never like to see someone resort to eminent domain. It goes against many of our values as Americans. However, in this particular situation, the eminent domain isn't being exercised by the city. It's being done by Right Hennepin, which has its own eminent domain authority. So there's nothing that we as a city can do about that process. We received lots of communication about this proposal. I think I want to acknowledge everybody who has written has been extremely respectful and professional, and I appreciate that, especially from the family who's impacted. You guys have conducted yourselves very, very well, and I appreciate the way that you've communicated with the city and managed this whole process, which I know has been very difficult for all of you. I want to give some history for those who may not be as involved but are hearing this for the first time. So Kevin indicated when we heard a similar proposal last year, that came before the Planning Commission, was recommended against, council resisted it as well. The reason why we were able to do that at that time is the parcel was zoned urban reserve, which requires a 20-acre minimum lot size. And the applicant, Right Hennepin, didn't want to purchase that big of a parcel, which required them to ask for a variance. And the variance process gives the city an element of discretion. So we're able to make subjective judgments about the impact on the surrounding area when there's a variance at play. In this case, there isn't a minimum lot size, which didn't require a variance, so we don't have the same kind of flexibility. So we are required to function in a judicial manner. All we can really speak to is what elements of the plan do or do not conform to code requirements. We can't really go beyond the code, unfortunately, in this case. So I really applaud you, especially Susie, digging into, okay, what does the code say? What are the things the city has to look at? And then presenting a case on each of those items. I really respect that level of diligence and detail. And so I want to show you the same kind of respect by trying to process what I heard you say. So you talked about 5 main topics. First one was electromagnetic fields and excessive ground currents. And I really appreciate the honesty that was shown in laying out the evidence is not clear-cut, doesn't quantify the risk, which makes it hard to weigh. I think a mitigating factor here, there's already a substation across 116
kind of in the same area, that's already up against gas pipelines, it's already up against other kinds of uses. There's already power lines in this general area. So I really like the suggestion that we consider in the future code changes to figure out where things like this would have a smaller impact and revise the code to drive any future substations into something else. I don't know what that would be, because every kind of land use would be negatively impacted. Maybe there's other things that we could do to mitigate that. The third thing you talked about was environmental concerns, specifically about the kind of oil that's stored in the transformers and that being a potential for leakage or explosions. So I researched that independently a bit, and I reached out to Wright-Hennepin in advance of this meeting. There are biologically based oils that can be used so that if they spill, they biodegrade, and it's not going to pose the same kind of environmental hazard that a mineral oil would. They considered that option. He responded to me with a somewhat detailed note that indicated they've already purchased the transformers. If they try to swap out the oil at this point, it voids the warranty, and they would probably also have an increase in the noise level that the transformers generate. So it appears like it's not currently an option to do that. But they did say that if it needs to get replaced at some point, they would consider going to a different transformer design that could utilize that to improve the environmental impact. The fourth item that you mentioned was sound pollution and the hum. That was part of why council didn't want to see it go up against homes in the first place. In this case, we can't consider that as heavily because, again, it's not a variance situation. I would also note that in this particular location, the 116 noise is also pretty significant. So it's not like you're going to expect a lot of silence there because of the traffic noise. The visual impact, I like the idea of some kind of a barn look. I was really interested in what can we do to try to minimize how ugly this could be. We actually reached out the last time this came up to our former planning commission member, Meredith Wu, who's an architect. And she had some specific ideas that we could try to implement. One of them was using fencing material that's black that will blend into the environment better than a bright silver fence. I'd like to see that done if possible. If there's something else we can do that raises the architectural standards a bit higher in light of this being residential, I think that would be a positive. Just want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Yeah, okay. Then Anthony, thank you for speaking also. I took notes on what you said as well. I like the fact that you're interested in the safety aspect and you brought that to the fore in a different way. There is already a gas line in 116 that actually is next to the existing substation that's there. So I don't see this as increasing the risk there because it's already existing in the same location. Thank you for pointing out a few different examples of substations that are better hidden. I think we should try to model, to the extent that we can, encourage Wright-Hennepin to model what they do on this station around those where they are less visually intrusive. And then for Matt Fowle's comments, I did note your comment the last time as well. We did look at that Larkin site. That's part of what the city asked Wright-Hennepin to consider the last time they came through. So we actually spent a couple different hours of conference calls with different Wright-Hennepin folks talking about the ins and outs of what that would require. And it turned out that it wasn't going to be viable because of the narrow right-of-way, and the other utilities are already along Larkin, unfortunately. Because that would have been an ideal location for this, because it is off of the main right-of-way, and it's not surrounded by as many homes as this site will be. So I'll just wrap up. I don't like the way this was handled. I don't like that the family feels that they were bullied. I expect more from a company that has the power, eminent domain to handle themselves responsibly. It sounds like that wasn't done in this case. I would like to encourage better in the future. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or?
Yeah, I got a question for the council. How many of you were called by Wright-Hennepin's attorneys during this process?
No.
Not by their attorneys, by the president.
And so I was called by the attorneys, and I always feel like when somebody leads with their attorney group, that's a problem. I think I understand what you guys went through when dealing with Wright Hennepin. I'm a man, I can handle manly conversations, and I can handle uncomfortable conversations. But it kind of pisses me off when it's not a conversation, but a series of threats and lawsuits, threats, and what will happen if they don't get a substation. And I was advised not to talk about eminent domain. And I was advised not to use the way they acquired the land as a reason to be for or against this current application. And I feel like we've known that Corcoran is growing. I mean, I've been on council for 6 years. The Met Council in the 2030 plan, which was 10 years ago, had the population of Corcoran growing to 14,000 by 2030. It wasn't a mystery to anybody paying attention or watching or looking that we were growing houses and we were growing populations, and so was the west side of the metropolitan area. So I don't buy that. There's a saying that goes, your lack of preparation doesn't constitute an emergency on my part, which I firmly believe is the case here. I don't think they did that right. And eminent domain is a process by which a government entity compels or forces a property owner to sell their property to them. And it pisses me off, honestly, that that process was used in this case. I agree with you. It's like the most un-American thing you can do is when a big entity comes and makes someone sell their property to them. And it's a kind of a common theme right now in America where there's there are people that want to take from others for the benefit of the greater good, paying no mind or attention to who they're taking property from. And I think it's bullshit. And I think the process is, I've never used it. We've had 5 opportunities since I've been on this council to use eminent domain, and I've said no every time. And I feel like if somebody won't sell the city or any other entity their property, they got to find a different way, whatever the case may be, even if it costs their members money. I'm a member, but I don't think it's within our right to compel somebody to sell Wright Hennepin their property if they don't want to. So I'm very much against it. However, we can't use the process of how they acquired the site in our decision as to whether or not we allow the site to go through. And I really think in my researching for this that if we stand on principled grounds and say, we're not going to allow you to do this, or we're going to make life difficult for you, Wright Hennepin, I actually think we put the city in danger, and I think we put the city's finances in danger because there would be cause for electrical disruptions. There would be they would have a pretty darn good case that we would owe them multiple millions of dollars for a stance against the substation. And so part of my responsibility as a city councilman is to consider the city's finances and consider avoidance of negative financial consequences. And in this case, I think we'd have one. And so I will do what is asked of me, and I will not consider eminent domain part of my decision tree because it's not appropriate. But I think that, and I'll probably vote for it, but I think we can do better with, one, hiding it and doing the best we can to not be as visible. I appreciate your ideas for making it less visible. And I think we also need to have a more constructive relationship with Right Hennepin to identify areas today for future growth and do the best we can as a city, even though they will always have the ability to eminent domain, to, I guess, work with them and identify areas of the city where we feel like substations should go and start the process before it's an emergency on whose definition it is.
Well said. I agree with just about everything you said there, John. I think, and again, not wanting to speak for others, but I think none of us are particularly pleased with how the whole process went down and the process that it's going through to happen. But like John said, it doesn't so much matter, unfortunately, that we don't like that or that it's not how we wished it would have happened. And that doesn't, unfortunately, get to weigh into our decision on it. But yeah, I'd share your frustration. I think the whole council does and understands the concerns you guys have raised. And like others have said, appreciate you guys coming out and voicing your concerns and doing it in the manner that you have. Appreciate it.
I'd just like to clarify a comment Mr. Nichols made, this really didn't come before us before. It came before the Planning Commission. It was dropped before it came to this council. And as far as conference calls that you may have had, that was probably between you and.
Yes.
Yeah, because I had one, maybe two calls with project manager at Right Hennepin, and this was prior to the original proposal. At that time I told them I think they should locate it in our commercial area. It would be better suited for the city, as we have an undeveloped park. That fell on deaf ears. They gave some excuse about infrastructure and road right-of-way and whatnot, but, you know, companies can work around situations if they really want to. I feel they didn't make an effort in that regard. So I would agree, best location is, in my mind, it's not the best location. I have a question for staff. Is there anything with regards to Minnesota Pollution Control or Department of Health permitting when it comes to substations?
Councilmember Schultz, I'm not aware of anything that they apply separately. I don't know if, John, if you have any. I'm not aware of any additional permits that they have to apply for through the MPCA or the Minnesota Department of Health.
Okay.
In addition to just if they had sewer and water, the permits that you would see with those type of utilities.
So there's no governmental oversight when it comes to, in Minnesota, when it comes to these electromagnetic fields or ground currents or anything with regards to permitting of storage of oil? I mean, if you have a gas station, you have to get permits for storing fuels on property, and I'm surprised you don't have to do that with something of this kind.
I'm not aware of any. The applicant is present tonight if you wish to ask them if there's permits that they have to apply for, because they may be more aware of the ones that come from other agencies.
Okay. With regards to the sound pollution issues, I can understand what you're saying. When this came before us before, I stopped and parked my truck at Larkin Road and 116 and walked towards the golf course, and I walked a pretty long ways before I quit hearing the hum of those transformers, and I think people thought I looked like a idiot walking up and down the street and listening, but I do agree with you, it will be a concern. So if this does move forward, I think we have to do our best to try to mitigate as much as possible. And I, for one, kind of opposed to the acceptance of a donation for the linear park. They want to make a donation, they can make a donation back to the current landowner, and they can sell it for a commercial property as far as I care, and let them put something on it. And I hope Wright Hennepin does better than what we heard. If that really did happen, what was said about these people's reputation and whatnot, it's kind of disgusting.
Did you want to ask the applicant on any of that additional stuff, or?
I'm curious to know. I don't think it's going to make an impact on what happens here, but I'm curious to know what permitting is required as far as public safety from the state of Minnesota with regards to transformer sites.
Yeah, if we could get some insight on what that requirement is from the applicant.
My name is Kurt Court. I work with Wright Hennepin. I'm their engineering director, so I'll try to answer your question the best I can. Regarding I'll just start with the oil. We are required to have what we call a SPCC plan for spill containment in event of an oil leak, and we have to, and that's a requirement, I believe, from the MPCA in a method to contain the oil. So what we do in we have enough space to contain an oil spill. We also do several things on this transformer that we have purchased. We alarm it, we monitor it 24/7. In the event of a change of oil level, we are notified immediately and we dispatch crews accordingly. I'm not saying that's gonna stop, something from happening, but we are on site right away and trying to do whatever damage control we can. We have not had a major catastrophe of this nature at WH, so I would say that probability of this happening is very rare. And so I just want to say we're prepared for that type of thing. The EMF levels, we've got certain types of conductor that try to limit the impacts to the EMF level in the substation. I mean, as Susie stated, there's varying conflicts and a lot of information out there on whether health effects of EMF are as dangerous as some people think. I've tried to keep in touch with a lot of that, and I'm not a doctor, and I will be the first one to say I have nothing to do with health, and I'm not the picture of perfect health, obviously. But what I would say is, in my 30 years of experience, I've worked with a lot of utilities and a lot of linemen, and as far as like cancers and other things, from my personal experience, I have not seen a consistent death or any weird cancer setup that comes from this, but that's my opinion. That is not WH's viewpoint or anything. I'm just giving you my professional viewpoint. I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions, but exactly if there's any other ones that you would have that I could detail here, I'd gladly try.
So the transformers that contain this oil are sitting over gravel or something like that? They're not in a basin of any kind?
They are sitting on what we would call it's a double, technically it's we call it a ground grid, and we put anywhere from 9 to 16 inches of clean gravel, which amounts to no fines in the gravel. So in the event of a spill, it spreads across our 200 by 200 square site. It's contained initially there. Also, if there's any runoff into that, other area, it spills into the spill plan of the berming and the water runoff. It flows into that area and is contained there as a secondary containment. That's not by design, that's just where it flows. So with that in mind, that's kind of the ground grid with the loose gravel tends to should contain any kind of spill that we have. And it should stay in the gravelled area inside the fence, actually, is our initial designs on that. So that's kind of how we look at containing the oil. We do, to Jeremy's question about the bean oil, we did look into that in the early stages when it developed, and we had some technical concerns with some of the cold temperatures and the bean oil. I think you may have heard some of the biodiesel questions that were raised along that same lines. So we were hesitant there. I mean, we are probably staring at a voltage upgrade coming here from our transmission company not in the near future, but out a little ways. And to what we told Jeremy, we would definitely consider an alternate oil source at that time. I mean, this time we have ordered everything in advance. You got COVID going on, you got long lead times. So just to try to stay ahead of this, we ordered in advance. We went and got out low. We put extra requirements in the dB level of the transformer as a specification requirement, and it is tested out 5 to 7 dB below the recommended ANSI standards. So I'm hoping that helps impact some of the concerns you have with regards to the noise level. I mean, we can erase it, but we can we've tried to lower it by design, and we will, obviously we're putting slats up, that'll help. I mean, we're not putting soundproofing up at this time, and if there's anything the city would have on that they prefer to see, we'd gladly entertain that. So.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When would the next substation come in then? How many, like, what's the populate? Must be some formula of homes versus new substations.
That's it's kind of dependent on how Corcoran fills out. Right now, as you guys probably noticed, it's flowing in from Maple Grove like gangbusters. It's coming in on the north side. We have substations up in I guess it'd be the Rogers Trailhaven area. We have a sub up there that's covering kind of the north slope in a way. I don't mean use rough terms, but the north side is kind of covered from that direction. We also deal with a Excel piece of ground in Corcoran too. So that breaks up our territory. So a site that might have some substation possibility is, I believe, down in 55, there's a new industrial facility, industrial park that's being considered in planning or something. Depending on how that develops out, we may have to look at something there, but based on what we've seen in the past, we don't see an upgrade needed at this time. But as mentioned here, we're not going to wait around. This is a tough one because we're trying to get into the existing infrastructure that's already established. So,
Do have kind of a follow-up on that regarding the existing one that's there. I know this was touched on briefly, I think, at the Planning Commission. What are you guys' plans with that? I mean, best I can tell, you don't have any two substations operating this close together anywhere.
Well, what'll happen with Corcoran 1, we call it, we're looking at about a 5-year window to try to transfer our wires out of there, and what we would do is move that into the other site that we have. So we'd have 2 of these. Right now we have 1 transformer coming for the new growth, for the new bay, and we would put the second bay in using the old transformer that's in Corcoran. We'd refurbish it, look at and maybe an oil change on it, and then we would put that particular substation transformer back in service and feed those feeders out of that at that time. That would be the filling of this. To address your question regarding our 2 substations, we have a couple substations, one in we call it our Cedar Island 1, Cedar Island 2, Maple Grove, and our Arbor Lakes 1 and 2. We will be expanding our Arbor Lakes sub in Maple Grove to deal with load growth in those areas also. Cedar Island's been an established double-ended sub now for 20 years at least. And that's got 2 of them in the same size fence, similar to this one. We have several others that are set up to do such a thing. We just, as things grow out, we're gonna grow into them. So, any other questions I can answer?
Can I ask you one question about security? So, it was actually on 60 Minutes within the last few months about terrorism affecting our electrical grid in the US, and surprising the number of times our grid's been hit by not only cyber, but people doing personal attacks on facilities like this. So what type of security will this facility have to protect against vandalism and damage?
We've set up motion lights, a little bit against Kendra's, we've got several lights up there and we will be looking at probably video recording. We'll have monitors, that type of thing, and we will also, as far as other security features, we will, all these gates and valves that are accessible to, say, causing damage, we lock, we do what we can just to avoid someone walking in and doing something, but we will have video surveillance in this type of location.
Is there an alarm system of some kind if somebody's on the premises? Because video surveillance is an after the fact.
Right. I mean, that's something that we will definitely, we can add an alarm. We tend to avoid those because they draw, we can alarm. I mean, we would have to ask for forgiveness if we have some nuisance tripping on such a thing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of if you've got a driveway coming in that's shielded by landscaping and people can park in the back.
Right, and we're gonna, if they come into our driveway, I'm thinking we're gonna trip a bunch of lights on as they pull in addition to what's there, just in a kind of what I would say a calm residential effect. If somebody enters the site, we're gonna see some additional lighting come on from various areas. And we can set up an alarm. I mean, I know that's a relatively easy thing to do. It's just, we just have not done that before a lot, so. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Kurt's saying, I'm Bob Sandberg, Vice President of Power Supply. You know, security is paramount for us at the end of the day, both from a safety perspective, from residents, anyone trying to get into that space, as well as just protecting the equipment to make sure we have good reliability. So we're going to take that to the highest level that makes sense for both ourselves and for the community and how we're impacting those around the substation.
So you're not concerned with these EMFs?
So, as Kurt mentioned, EMS has been studied for a long time, right? It's been around. Nothing's been proven. It's a gray area. We're going to let the experts and the findings speak for themselves in that area. And then you also take into consideration, relative to EMF is all around us every day. It's in our microwaves, it's in our hair dryers, it's everything we use. And in fact, that's at a much higher level.
I don't use a hair dryer.
Buffer.
Well, if you're standing next to your wife, maybe, and she's drying her hair, you're going to get that. It's at a much higher level. So on the scale of EMF, this is at a much lower level. And you already have a high level existing transmission line right there that's constantly providing this. So you're not adding to it.
That's above ground.
Yeah, that's above ground. And from an additional incremental standpoint of it, it's not.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I think this is the first time I've spoken last. And I have so many thoughts. I started writing them down, but it was difficult. So, thanks everybody for being here. I have a very difficult time of not putting up with people not being neighborly, and I'm gonna say that straight outright. I'll pile on to John, I could pile on to John's comments, I won't. I'll start out with probably the one question that would help. Is there any way this could be relooked at, re-examined, and relocated that works better? And let me finish. I was on the planning commission not wanting it down where it was, and I understand the whole reason where it was. There was already a power line easement and everything else down in that corner, but we were gonna plop it next to some beautiful 5-acre wooded lands and such, again, right up next to 116. My mindset, probably the smartest thing in the world if I were a co-op owner, which I am, actually, we all are members, but we're all owners too. I had made the suggestion to move it, keep it on that same property, move it closer to the golf course, and there's a wetland splitting those two properties, or that entire 20 acres, and buffer it just like the comments made of hiding it more. So, again, I'll ask the question again, is there any way this can be re-examined, or are we just too far along? Eminent domain is processed, everything is done, everything's signed, sealed, has it been delivered, is all of these questions. I'm frustrated at the time of the planning commission that it wasn't well represented or well presented that eminent domain was being used, those kind of things. If it goes through, I would have loved to have had full discussion from the planning commission instead of saying this isn't ready to come to us. I would have loved to have heard their 5 ideas. It's kind of a debacle, and that might not be the right word, but this is not Corcoran. And I want to say this is not, I don't believe, Wright Hennepin. Very well-spoken engineer and such. I doubt he was one of the bullies. That's what I want to see. Timeline on this thing, I'd really like to, I mean, if we have no chance to say no to this, I would like more input from the planning commission. I was here that night of the planning meeting. Is there a time on our yay or nay on this thing? And I already have heard crystal clear that nay would jeopardize our city in a terrible way.
Commissioner Varenkamp, the review deadline for the city to act on the application is May 31st of 2022.
Okay.
The last day that we're allowed.
Okay. So again, I'd love to see this go back to the planning commission now that what's been done has been done, but respectfully, I would ask, is there any way, and Commissioner Lanterman was very eloquent on the way he spoke. I want to thank everybody for being respectful tonight and not interrupting anybody in what they've been doing, but the convenience is there, the power line's right there, everything is right there, and it makes it less complicated for the public utilities to do things because you're not stringing wires further away from that. I completely understand Larkin Road. The setbacks to everything that's along there, while it would be difficult, I still don't quite understand why borings and those kind of things can't be done. It costs more. I understand all of those things. When I was talking with Susie, the comment that Susie made to me was your real estate agent had a possible better location for it on that property and would be less impactful to the value of the property and those kind of things. We're talking Larkin Road ain't any more than 3/4 of a mile. And it's all open space, it's undeveloped, there's one parcel one home on that. I hate, there's not even, I could use more words, but I won't. I just don't dislike not being Corcoran friendly, not being neighborly, not being right. So think about that, chew on that a little bit. If this needs to go there, the barn and such, my mindset was, I'm tired of looking at chain link around power substations. I've already experienced this once in my stay in Maple Grove, the substation off of Lawndale next to Station 5, fire station and stuff. I've heard all of this from a number of people that there wasn't even homes close to this property. In my mind, I wanted to tell them, it's not your choice. We need a substation. We need these things to go through. That substation went in. I believe if I measured correctly on the overheads and those kind of things, there's one house that's 87 feet away from that substation. In every house in that development, east of that substation, their values are extremely high. The resources that we have in the city, Chair Jacobs back there being a previous assessor for one of our neighboring communities and such, his comments, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, I think you said, if I'm saying it wrong, substations, those kind of things have very little effect on assessments. I don't want to believe you, but I think you said it kind of that way, if I may ask, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Of course.
Well, the
Personal opinion, and nobody can come after you,
Okay.
Mr. Jacobs.
The areas that I was in charge of, there were several influences. One was a pipeline.
Yeah.
One was a landfill.
We don't have a landfill. We've got some interesting properties around here. We've got, okay.
And then a high voltage power line.
Yeah.
In one neighborhood. And out of all of that, the only negative influence we could measure through sales, and this was a neighborhood that probably you would consider a starter neighborhood. So there was more than 10-12% turnover in this neighborhood every year, so there was more than enough sales. The only negative influence we could find was as a result of the high voltage power line. Now, that's different than a substation, but that...
Above ground was an issue, underground, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you. Chair Jacobs. We aren't a bunch of hillbillies out here. We've got tremendous resources, wonderful volunteers. While all of these guys were elected, I've been appointed. So whether or not I get to continue up here after November, I don't know. I do care because I speak my piece. I don't trip over anything, but I'm a very simple person. And I just would really like, is there an opportunity to revisit by relocating? Is there a way to work with the trustee group and the realtor on possibly putting that in a better place in that property? I know we've had judges, our attorneys, everything else. Is there a way that we can swallow the medicine more than what's being force-fed at us right now? We've listened, I've spoken my piece and those kind of things. I respectfully ask if you could just, we don't need that. I'm talking straight to right Hennepin. I did have a extremely good conversation with the president of the company, Tim. While I understand and those kind of things, I find it hard to say no to this, but I want to say no. And I'd keep kind of looking at my attorney. I'd want to ask him, can I say no? without affecting this? Is there a way we can revisit this between now and May to make it more acceptable to all? If it's not, my thoughts, I was going down that way, the fence, I hate the chain link, I hate the slats. I would rather see a sound wall, a sound barrier. Good God, Maple Grove, the state and stuff is putting up some beautiful concrete walls and those kind of things. To see a mural of a barn and a silo on the side of this thing, would that cover it? Could it be 60 feet high to hide the spires? Is there a way to do this? I'm just spitballing on stuff here. I'm so frustrated that anybody resorts to eminent domain, especially here in Corcoran. I'll say a couple more things. Am I way past my 5 minutes? I'm sure.
We get 10.
Do we?
We can wait.
So I got 40 seconds left.
We can make a motion to.
Timeline on this, again, I asked that. Future sites, by God, if we don't have a map of future guesses of Hennepin, Wright Hennepin, or XL Energy, or Great Rivers, who all runs power through our city, if we don't have future sites already identified, signs out there, acquisitions done now and stuff, this eminent domain crap sucks. How's that for trying to curb my feelings? And again, I said screening. I think I called Jessica and I talked. I would really like to revisit the screening on this. Putting a lipstick on a pig is not acceptable to me. Berms and those kind of things, while they serve good things for a lot of things in town here, a solid wall. I'm disappointed to hear that there is no some type of catch basin under these, other than free-flowing 8 inches of clean gravel or rock to spread it out, those kind of things. I'm not a proud member of Wright Hennepin right now. I've been a Wright Hennepin customer now for 38 years. I was okay after the substation in Maple Grove. This one is just, I can't. I've lost countless hours of sleep trying to figure out a way to make it better. And the only way I can do it is I need better neighbors. I need the trustees of the property to speak openly like you did tonight. I appreciate that very much. I need a civil discussion between them and Wright Hennepin, the bullying and those kind of things. If you'd like a bully, I'll show up and I can bully both sides. I hate doing it, but I can get loud. I can be obnoxious with the best. But is there a way that this can be revisited, redone, those kind of things, or are we too far by? And I'll direct that question initially to our city attorney, if I may. How's that for unrehearsed direction and those kind of things?
Thank you, Councilmember Behrenkamp. Just to go right at the question that you're asking, I think my advice, staff's advice would be to evaluate it under the plat and the permit standards. You have an opinion from staff that it does comply with those. It's fair to ask the applicant if there are other options available. If you're asking me, as far as the two reasons you gave, use of eminent domain, or preferring a different location, I would say neither of those are a valid basis for denial.
Okay. I didn't like that answer, but you're used to that.
I liked your wall idea.
Yeah, can we make,
Can that be a requirement?
I'd give up the blessed berms and if we do something like that, I'd love to see a concrete basin underneath it to be even more protective on possible spills, those kind of things. The ghost plat of a road going next to Wright Hennepin as maybe a buffer, and then re-accessing the power station to that road, that ghost platted road. I think no, I'll be nice. I think that's silly crazy. You're gonna be widening and improving Larkin to your substation, that's your driveway. I don't want to run this through residential, commercial, anything else that would happen east of this or north of this and such. We're already dealing with a wetland that's invisible. I'm going to say it straight up. I have those issues related to,
Technically, they have to have a driveway.
but I'm just saying that driveway can just stay on Larkin. I don't want it, when the planning commission, at the planning commission time, Kevin, I think you were talking at some point, when the road extends down from 10 to Larkin, that new driveway would go off of that residential road and stuff. If I'm speaking out of turn, I'm sorry, I'd rather just see Wright Hennepin's driveway off of Larkin, and that's where it stays. I hope to God that this substation would be locked up, period. There'd be no opportunity for anybody to drive down a driveway, park, and do any damage or anything to this and such. I'm rambling. I'm way beyond 10 minutes.
I can address
And
a
I'd
couple of
really
points
like to
there.
say a lot more things, but
Yeah, Councilmember Van
Thanks.
Camp. So the 2 points I heard in there, one was the question on the screening and,
Yeah.
fence versus wall, chain link versus other materials. The code requires the substation to be screened, whether that's a chain link versus a cedar fence or some other style. That's all within the restrictions to screen the property, so the council can certainly request that be added.
Okay.
And can certainly.
I know a good fence guy. We've had the fence guy in town that built a beautiful fence that's in question. But I mean, I want something so substantial and crazy, ludicrous.
I will mention that anything over 4 feet high for a wall would have to be structurally designed by an engineer and then okayed by this, Kevin Mattson.
Yeah, those engineers, they always got to
They'd
dig
have
into
to
this
go through the
too.
process with that and make sure that would be a viable option if the space on the site can accommodate it. Regarding your question on access, their current plan is to access off Larkin Road and improve that to greater than a 4-ton road and bring the construction
Right.
traffic and everything through there. There may need to be, depending on the timing and the construction, there was conversation of a temporary access in for construction vehicles.
Off
That
of
would-
116.
Correct, but
Yeah.
that would not be a permanent solution, that would be a temporary.
But at one point in the planning commission, the talk was when a north-south road would come in, their new driveway would be off of that road. I don't want any chance of that happening ever. If the road goes in next to the substation and those kind of things, that's all great. That's more buffer if we can't find a better ground. I don't want any traffic, even though I think in the planning commission meeting, they were talking 1 to 2 trips to the substation a day by Wright Hennepin. I don't even want that in that neighborhood if we have to swallow this, so if I'm being out of line, out of reasonable, please let me know, guys, but I'm speaking a lot of things, and I sit there and watch Michelle, and she's just writing like crazy right now, so I'm glad it's recorded.
Counselor Camp, to the question of, typically we try to, when a new road would come through, we try to move those driveways off of those collector roads, so that's likely why we would have.
I understand, I don't want to do that. Sorry, I know that, but good gosh, Larkin, let's not impact this. I do love the fact that, Alan, your comment of I could give a darn about the parkway and all those things, even though our parks voted this through 5-0 and are excited about that north-south corridor parkway and stuff. I don't know what the deal was, how much, that's not ours to decide, but in my mind, I'd be resistant like crazy to get even more, just because
Do we have the
it's hard to
ability?
swallow this.
Do we have the ability to change item 7F to not accept the warranty deed, but to instruct the applicant to give the warranty deed over to the National Trust?
It's a great question.
Sorry, you said which number?
It's 7F.
In the
resolution, or?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that.
Or I'm sorry, it's 5F.
Okay. It's a great question.
So the condition applicant shall work with the city to locate landscaping outside of the drainage and utility easements?
No, it says outlot A shall be deeded to the city by warranty deed. The applicant must provide a copy of the city for city approval. Right now, do our plans have linear park extending just to Larkin?
Yeah.
So if we could abandon that and stop the park short, we could.
Or it turns into the option of that property owner instead of Wright Hennepin to give that property up. That's part of their park dedication if something.
I'd rather have them turn it into a commercial property and develop some commercial in front of it and actually
You did
benefit
say
from
that.
it.
I don't know if we,
I don't think there's space.
I don't know if there's enough
We can't
room.
constitutionally make, even though the flip has happened, I don't know if it's constitutional to, as part of approve a project to make the applicant give land to another private citizen. Because in this case, it sort of makes sense, right? But like, can you imagine like if that happened in any other context?
Well, we can't sell it to them for $1 either.
We can't, no. I don't know if we can do, I don't think we can do it, but John's right there. Maybe we could ask the attorney.
Thank you, members of council. Councilmember Bonnelly, you are correct. You can't make it a mandate that it go somewhere else. It's part of the compliance with code for park dedication. I can say that once you collect the land for park purposes, you'll have it for that purpose. I don't have the deed in front of me, but I imagine it's going to be indicating useful for that purpose, so your utility for it is a little bit limited at that point. You could decline to accept that, but that would involve redrawing the plat. So I think that the problem with that is the eminent domain process, separate and distinct from this, has gone forward involving the entire part of this anyway. So that land, as a part of that process, will be taken by Wright Hennepin, and their proposal is to give a portion of it to the city as a part of this process. And you can decline to accept it, but it doesn't go back to the other.
Right. Yeah, so we could, right, what you just said, we could, even if we didn't accept it, it wouldn't change that that's what the eminent domain is taking.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I think we could look at, instead of changing how we would treat the park dedication portion of the parcel, maybe in light of this new use, it would make sense to look at the zoning of the rest of the parcel. And maybe there are other things that could be done, because now there's going to be a substation here, maybe other things are appropriate around the substation.
Other than mixed residential.
Besides mixed residential, it could be a better fit for the current landowners and what they would be able to do with it.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that's not necessarily right here, but I think for sure, that's something we want to keep in mind when this parcel does come to develop, kind of the history of all this and how it's happened, and being very cognizant of what's right, what would be right there, and do whatever we can do to try to help smooth things out for the landowners and try to mitigate.
I think we have to take the park dedication fund, because we can't selectively enforce city code. At least.
Well, you're just full of all kinds of news, John.
Yeah.
But they'd still have that land. So we just wouldn't have it as a park, but they'd still take that land.
Right. They'd be stuck with it.
Mr. Mayor? If I can, you shoot on my initial question, is there a way to be more neighborly, do something a little bit more different than the status of all of this stuff?
So I don't know where we're at in the process. I know we had a presentation overview that could have answered a lot of these questions, and kind of went in front of that and asked questions, and that's your purview. And so however you want to move forward, right, is your meeting. I can go either way. I can go through that, which then could answer some of the questions, and move. If you've seen it, we can move through it quickly. It was relatively the same one we did at the Planning Commission, but addresses a lot of the background of why we're here, how we got here, how we did our due diligence effort, and some of the limitations we have around sites.
Let's ask the council. I'm pretty familiar with it. I was at that meeting and I've seen it. I don't know if everyone else, would you like them to go through it or?
I read it.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I'd like to see it go back to the council or the planning commission and get their input.
no, he's talking
with
about
this.
delivering the presentation
Yeah,
tonight.
I know,
Oh.
I know.
I hear you.
See the presentation, but I would like input from the planning commission now that everything is straightened out from their concerns instead of it just being on us. I'd like their input too.
Gotcha.
That's me, but they can see the presentation. I have no problem seeing it.
Sure, if you want to run through it quickly. I think, like I said, I think most of us are pretty familiar with it.
Do we have any air conditioning in this room?
Yeah, could we kick it up a bit?
Warming up, isn't it? All the hot air from
Us.
Councilmember Berrycamp the last 28 minutes. Sorry, guys. Cook Lake folks, thanks for hanging around.
Yeah.
So, are we doing the same thing? I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
can go to
just
the-
tell me when.
Yeah, go to the next one. So a little background, right? Right Hennepin, nonprofit electric cooperative owned by our members. Our members sit on our board of directors. You know, we're making decisions based off of what's best for the membership as a whole. I understand and appreciate the position you guys are in. I will, push back a little bit in that this is a pushed, that this was a rushed situation. We've kind of been talking with the city now for over a year and a half, 2 years on this. And recall, we did bring a site to here that had a purchase agreement in place. And we did move forward based off of a variant, denial, and pushback and feedback from the council and the city saying, we don't want you next to existing residential neighborhoods. We want you to go further north. And I will say, this site that we're showing you today was the original site, and we moved away from that based off of the initial city discussions, saying, okay, it's not like we want you further south. So we've kind of gone back and forth based off of feedback that we've gotten from the city and the council. So we're trying to incorporate all that. And so I want to press upon that fact that this is not taken lightly by any means. We want to be a good neighbor. We're trying to do the best for what's our whole membership. And at the end of the day, we've talked to a lot of residents, a lot of landowners. And if no one's willing to sell, if you don't have a willing seller, what's your ultimate path forward, right?
Well, couldn't you use the eminent domain on any of the other 9?
But then it's not, then you're
You didn't have a
choosing
willing seller here, did you?
But then you're choosing a lesser solution. If you're gonna have to go down the same path,
So the site dictated everything.
the site, it's access to transmission lines, distribution lines. So our members, our staff live in this area, we're part of the community. So why are we here? We've demonstrated this, right? We have load growth. It's happening in this area, it's happening quickly. We try to utilize your long-term plan to identify where it's coming from, and then we build infrastructure around that. That said, our current infrastructure, which has been around since 1952, our substation there, is its capabilities. So we have to build a new substation just to maintain reliability. And as we discussed at the planning session, our grid is kind of a mesh system. It's not just serving one area. It kind of overlaps and backfeeds different areas. And so you cannot allow one substation to bear the burden of all the load growth. Corcoran, this isn't news to you guys. You know this. You've seen the flats coming through here. Huge load growth, over 30% growth since 2018, and that's not abating. We're seeing continue. So we're now responding to that, and as we know, growth ebbs and flows. So even though we may have a 20-year plan, it's not guaranteed that the growth is going to continue as we saw in 2008, 2007. So we're trying to meet this. We see it coming. Our system is taxed now, and it's not slowing down in the next couple of years, so that's why we're moving. And now remember, I'm going to go back to this. We brought this up 2 years ago. So it's been a process just to get to this point.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
I understand exactly what you're saying about load and growth. So can you address the comments made by council members about looking at the code and putting substations in specific areas does that even play into reality when we're talking about if you have growth in a certain area, a substation needs to be in this spot versus that spot? I mean, can a council actually, does it make sense from a council standpoint, from a utility standpoint, that we dictate where substations go in the future?
I think the better approach is to work together to identify long-term trends and identify areas that meet both the needs of the utility and the city. And think out 10, 15 years. And have that discussion now versus waiting till, when the need is imminent.
So do you, I asked that question before, do you have any idea when, like, let's say it's just you in a room deciding when the next substation comes in? Like, when would that be? We actually are thinking along the same lines as you. We should work together and not have this happen
Yeah, I
again.
agree, yeah.
So when will someone come to us and say, as you suggested, 10 to 15 years, in the next 10 to 15 years, we're gonna need a substation somewhere.
In
So
X.
we can figure it out, why don't we do that?
So, good point, and I think we should, and that's actually an activity we try to take down with all the cities, right? We have these discussions, we have Kurt's group who looks at long-range planning, and what we'd want to do is sit with you guys and understand where you're planning on your development to occur. What's going to occur, is it small commercial, is it large commercial, is it residential? And then try to build a model, right, a forecast off of that, based off of where you've designated load to occur. And once we have that, then we can say, okay, we understand that it'll probably have to be in this area. Not gonna be specific, you're never gonna be nailed down to 100%, but it'll get us in an area where we both then have a general understanding of this will be the future need, and this will most likely be a location where we're gonna have to target.
So this council has a fire plan going out the next 20 years, and we try to do that. Who then at Wright Hennepin would be the person we contact about putting together a power plan for 20 years?
Yeah, so it will be Kurt's group, and his engineering staff will work with city staff and try to coordinate that effort. Myself, I have a key account rep who stays in regular contact with municipals like yourself and your city administrator, Ryan. And so we facilitate discussions. In fact, I sit in one every year on just, hey, how are things going? What are we seeing for low growth? Are we on the same page? Are there issues? So we're having those on different levels. It's now taking it to what you're trying to get to is, let's identify those sites today. So you have an idea of what we're thinking from both a location and a time frame standpoint.
And I'd propose this, that let's get it on an agenda or on a schedule that every year, the mayor and you and whoever from your team wants to, is the right people to meet with, get it on a schedule, and we meet annually at the very least to go over this.
I definitely will put that down, yes, I agree.
So would you look at acquiring land far in advance then, or would we come back to a point like we are today, 10 years in the future?
I know, I think we want to avoid, this sort of process and do that. Look ahead, make an investment well in advance. Try to avoid a situation where you're fitting it in and put it out somewhere where you're secured to land and it's well known for a long period of time who owns it and what may be there. But I'll say that I think we're all on the same page on what we want to accomplish going forward. So there's no pushback from me or Wright Hennepin from that standpoint, and I totally agree on that. Next slide. So due diligence effort, right? Very comprehensive, robust. We don't just pick a site. We don't just say, okay, this is the easiest. A lot of points here. 10 different points that you have to account for. I'm going to go just pointing out a couple of them. Proximity to transmission lines. And we've noted that. It comes west along Larkin, goes down 116, and then goes east. So we picked our first spot because it was at the intersection where it kind of cut east again. We need to stay within that because we have to be able to get power from the high voltage transmission lines at the end of the day. That's your limitation. And at the same time, we have to know where the load growth is and how we're going to meet it. And so we have to be able to get distribution lines out. Challenge of Larkin, going west. because it's a right-of-way. It's a small right-of-way. It's not the same as what we have on 116, which is 65 feet unencumbered. It's already full of gas lines, fiber lines, telephone lines. You can't send all your lines back. So we need to get at that intersection at 116 in Larkin to be able to go all four directions, because that's what you're trying to do. That's why we have an existing sub there. You move away from there, now you have to put all your lines back just to get to that intersection.
And are all your lines going to be underground or above ground?
They'll be underground. And I have a picture in here that'll show you that. So, we look at all this. We also look at land availability. We talked about that. Who's willing to sell? First and foremost, if we can have a willing seller, that's what we try to target. If not, then you have to go down the next steps. Power reliabilities, power qualities, okay. So, first step, what can we do with our current substation? That was low hanging fruit. We first looked at that to say, we have this site, we have everything in place. Can we just take advantage of that? We can't. That site was built in 1952. The setbacks, the easements do not allow for any changes to our current substation. We have to get feeders up and down, and as we just talked about, the right-of-way on 116 is now 65 feet. You can tell that is not 65 feet. This was built back in 1952, and it's right at the corner. So it's just the small footprint does not allow for expansion, what we're going to need for those two transformers that are going to sit in there. So it's not. So just want to let you guys know, we pursued that. That was our first step, was let's see if we can take advantage of what we already own and what we have in place. We talked about this, the initial site. Same sort of setup as we are going at now, 2.26 acres. It just doesn't include, it still included the 65-foot setback, but it doesn't include the linear parkway that was required as part of the purchase to get back to the city. But it's adjacent to the existing transmission line. It was an undeveloped line. We did have a purchase agreement with Shamrock, but we did need a variance, and that was part of the site. But there was feedback from the city, right? At the end of the day, you're going to upset somebody, and we're trying to manage that the best we can, be neighborly, take into account all these facets. But at the end of the day, we got to serve 55,000 members. And so hard decisions have to be made. To that point about other sites, we looked in the industrial park. We went down west, we went down Larkin, we looked west of that, challenge coming back. So we looked in the industrial park, talked to anyone who had available land. We even looked at land around our substation. But that now you have existing developments, buildings, commercial entities who own it don't want to sell. You get into the industrial park, now you move away from your transmission line, so you're not just interconnecting right below it. Now you need to get state permits, you need to get easements. Now you're running transmission lines through the city, as opposed to just siting a substation. Now you have both, right? So you're gonna have issues and you're gonna have to deal with something along the way. We were not able to find a willing seller. Everyone had plans, but so I just want to point out. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, everybody, please, we listen to everybody. You've listened to me. I'm just saying, we've got sidebar conversations continuing, they're distracting. I'm giving Wright Hennepin the same respect as they gave you. Please, if you could. Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate that. So we reached out, legal reached out to all of them. We wanted to at least find out what the opportunities were. Did not find any. This is an example of how we put in our distribution lines. Two examples. Directional boring. This is what's required if you go down Larkin and you have existing driveways, landscaping, whatever. You have to go underground, which is all right. It's more costly, but that's all right if you have an unencumbered easement and you know what you're getting into. And you have the space to get all these lines in. So I point this out is this is what we'd be able to do along 116. There's no driveways, there's no existing utilities in that space. And so you're able to open, lay it in. Each one of these three lines is one distribution feeder. So when you think about if you're in Larkin, west of that, we'd have to take 1, 2, 3, 4 of these getting back directional board back to the intersection to then go north-south and then send to the south, northeast to the south. Whereas at the intersection, now we're able to run this north and south in this manner. A lot less, impact to residents in that area. In fact, there is none. It's undeveloped land. So let's talk about the current development site. It's immediately across from our substation. We've tried to work with the Dazels a number of times on securing it through negotiations. In fact, I met with them a couple times in the fall, and the property developer, the realtor, finding solutions. I think there was a point made of why can't you go further east on that parcel, and we did look at that. We did. We explored it because the developer had plans, so we talked through it. We did the assessment work, we did the easement work, but we couldn't fit on that east side because of the wetland buffers and then the easement from the road up. So you had constraints. But I just want to let you guys know, we did explore that. And then once it became clear that there wasn't going to be development, we ended up, we're back here in the corner. Why we're here, it's undeveloped land, the zoning allows, you guys talked about this, our right of way, we have access, and I think it was mentioned how many times we're going to be at the site. It's not 1 to 2 times a day, it's 1 to 2 times a month maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I-
It's not often.
I might have misheard.
Yeah, once
planning,
you
but-
got it in place, you're not visiting very often unless there's an issue. So let's talk about the site, 5.3 acres. It's moved back from 116 quite a bit for 2 reasons. One, the 65-foot right-of-way, as well as then the linear parkway. Taking both those into account, moves it back. There's 1.7 acres of that linear parkway, which donated, dedicated, it was part of the requirement,
Yep.
right? That's what it was, and it was told to us that you need to secure this and get it back to us. So it's not like we did this and, we're like tooting our own horns. It was part of the effort. And at the end of the day, landscaping, regardless of where we sited it, we knew landscaping was going to be an issue, right, at the end of the day. So this was a priority. We hired a professional, a landscaping architect. We've maximized the amount of planning we can get within the space allowed to us. Didn't try to make it just a straight line of trees. The feedback we got was try to blend it in so that you have stavering trees, you have different kinds, varieties. We're trying to do the best we can and listen to the feedback we're getting from the city, from residents on knowing their opinion of a substation. No different than a water tower, no different than anything you guys would just say from a lift station, something like that, right? It's a necessity. It's, at the end of the day, supporting the essential service of electricity. But we want to be good neighbors and do the best we can and try to have it at least blend in. And you saw pictures of this, so not too much time there, but just try to give an illustration of the degree of the trees and the landscaping we're doing around here in terms of trying to shield it from any side. Now, of course, this question's of, how about this side? You can't put trees that are going to go up into a transmission line. That's just fact, right? So there's limitations on how high we can, and what species we can put under there. The goal there would be to just try to minimize exposure to the fencing around the substation itself.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm over my rant and stuff. If you could stay on that picture.
Yep.
Jessica, the substation, how many more transformers, how many more things are, in 40 years, what's it gonna look like?
This is the max. So this takes an example.
Does
Takes into consideration.
the setbacks from
each.
each other, everything,
Yeah.
that's what it'll look like if you pay much attention to the substation, which is just blessed crazy down on 494 and down by the Home Depot and stuff. My gosh.
It excels.
I don't want anything like that, but if this is the maximum, okay.
So right now, we'd be building one, which is same as the one across the street. And at some point in time, Mr. mentioned that you retired and then you had your second one.
I think that's what Tim told me too, was that he didn't even say 5 years. He told me you guys didn't know what would happen with that other substation. This one would have to get up and running and things happen before you even consider tearing it down. He
We're not
said
gonna
it
put a
was,
timeframe on it because.
it was very premature.
We gotta build, we're gonna construct this one first, understand what the load comes on, what's gonna happen in the next couple of years, take that all into consideration. And then it'll be a planning discussion, of course.